What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Monday Morning Maester YouTube channel. I am your 2-bit Maester, and in this video, we're going to go ahead and do a 101 level breakdown for Season 2, Episode 1's House of the Dragon, A Son for a Son. Now, like I said, these videos that I'm going to do here weekly through the second season of House of the Dragon are really just going to be simplistic breakdowns, just things that are just easy to consume, easy to digest, painless trips to the chamber pot, and ultimately it's just going to make you guys smarter at the dinner table when you're trying to impress your friends, family, girlfriend, etc. All right, so we're going to start with a little map recap. I truly believe that if you understand where things are happening on the map, it's just easier to understand it. Things make a little bit more sense, right? There's a lot of names, a lot of castles, locations, famous battles, swords, weapons, you name it. Especially like in this season here in Season 2, we're going to be all over the map here with this civil war looming. So if we understand where all these landmarks are, again, it's just going to make everything be a little less confusing. So I'll shut up and let's go over to the painted table. Okay, guys, map recap time here, and we are kicking off Season 2, Episode 1 in a very familiar place that all of the Game of Thrones fans out there hold near and dear to their heart, and that would be the North. Okay, so that's Winterfell, and then shortly after that, we go up to the Night's Watch. We kick this one off with an introduction from Lord Torrhen Stark here, just giving us a little breakdown of a tradition and custom that they've done ever since King/Lord Torrhen Stark. A little bit on him later, they go ahead and they make some sacrifices to the wall, and that does not exclude House Stark's own family members, as we can see this little snippet here of what we can surmise is a younger brother of Lord Torrhen Stark there, pulling a short straw. That poor bastard can't be any older than 14 or 15, and he's just sentenced off to the wall. But it's their duty, right? These Starks love it. So we go ahead and we fast forward there up to the wall where Lord Torrhen is having a discussion with Prince Jacaerys. As we remember from the Season 1 finale, Rhaenyra dispatches her two eldest sons to go and get fealty from some high lords out there that bent the knee to her father earlier in the first season whenever Viserys named Rhaenyra his heir. She sends Jace out to treat with Lord Torrhen Stark of Winterfell, and also to the Vale to discuss fealty with Lady Jane Arryn. Okay, that would be the Eyrie. And then tragically, poor Luke, he's sent down to Storm's End. We know what happens there. So let's start here with the first scene of the episode here. Got a little very fun interactive map here. If you've seen any of my videos before, you know I like going to this map. So first off here, for everyone that just wants a little bit of insight, a little bit of clarity on where we're at, this right here is the North. The North is absolutely humongous. It's the biggest region in all of Westeros. It starts right around here, right around Greywater Watch here. That's referred to as the Neck. If you go and scroll up here, kind of looks like an old crone, right? That's why they're calling that the Neck right there. Okay, so the Neck all the way up to the wall. Okay, see the wall there? That's the North. Okay, there's Winterfell. That's the capital of the North. That is the Stark's stronghold. That is where we see the young Stark pull the short straw out of the hat. And you go up the King's Road, that takes you to Castle Black and the Wall. Okay, so that's where we get the first 5 minutes of the episode here. Again, I thought it was really cool that they started off the second season in a very familiar place. I don't think I'm mistaken here, but they don't show the North or like the like Winterfell at all in the first season of House of the Dragon. In fact, I'll just put all my money down on the table right now. They did not show it. I don't even know why I'm second guessing myself right now. But we don't see that at all. I thought it was a really good idea that they started the second season off in a very familiar place for all the Game of Thrones fans out there. We didn't go to the North at all in the first season. We certainly didn't see Winterfell. We didn't see the Wall. So for them to go to, you know, an old favorite, right? Sometimes like an old band, just like play the classics, play the hits, right? And that's what they started the second season off with. Hey, let's go to Winterfell. Let's go to the Wall. Let's see a Stark. We haven't seen like a Stark yet, besides that like really like brief little glimpse that we got of Cregan's dad back in the first season when he's swearing fealty to Viserys. You know, so I thought that that was just like paying homage there. Some very simple fan service. We know that a lot of people like the Starks. They like the North. They like Winterfell, the Wall. That was the scene of so many classic episodes of Game of Thrones. So very well done. But yeah, that's pretty much where the first 5 minutes of the episodes takes place, right? There's the capital there, pretty much in the heart of the north. And there is the wall up there. There's Castle Black. So yeah, that was the first 5 minutes right there. Moving on. Okay, guys, so the second place that we're going to go in this episode is Dragonstone. That's a place that we saw a lot of in the very first season of House of the Dragon. It's a place that, you know, down the stretch in Game of Thrones, we were there a lot as well. Okay, so here's a really like a maxed out view of where Dragonstone's at. Okay, Dragonstone is sworn to King's Landing. It's a part of the Crownlands. It's this little island right here. If you see me zoom in, hey, there's Dragonstone. Who are the people that are really in these scenes in Dragonstone? Well, primarily Daemon, Rhaenys, and later down the episode, we get Rhaenyra and Jace are there as well. This is where we're seeing a lot of the Black Council meetings, primarily this season. This is like their stronghold, basically, right? Whenever Rhaenyra leaves King's Landing in the first season, she goes to the ancestral Targaryen seat of Dragonstone, and that's basically where they hitch their wagon. That's their stronghold. That is where their base of operations is set up. Okay, so there's Dragonstone. Jumping ahead like a teeny tiny bit, we hear Daemon talking about securing Harrenhal. Since it's already in the photo right here, I'll just go ahead and like highlight it, if you will, or circle it. There's Harrenhal right there. It's just north of the God's Eye, which is like a humongous lake in the Riverlands. So they're sworn to House Tully. Okay, there's River Run right there, just for reference there. Harrenhal is the biggest castle in the Seven Kingdoms, even in its like decrepit state. Daemon wants to go and grab a foothold there in the Riverlands, just because the Riverlands is primarily, besides Dorne, the Riverlands touches every other region in Westeros, right? It touches the north, it touches the Vale, it touches the Crownlands, it touches the Reach, and it touches the Westerlands, and very close to the Iron Islands right there as well. Okay, so the Riverlands is a very critical point there, just because it's adjacent to every single kingdom in Westeros besides Dorne. So and right now they're on the fence too. They haven't picked a side. They haven't picked Aegon. They have not picked Rhaenyra. So that's where Daemon wants to go. Okay, so that's Dragonstone. Those were all the big players that were in Dragonstone here, throughout this first episode. So moving on to the next place. Okay, a little interesting one here. This is going to be Shipbreaker's Bay, and the primary person that we see in these scenes, and really the only one that we see that's of note, is Queen Rhaenyra. All right, so we're going to go ahead and here and look at it from above. There's Shipbreaker Bay. Hey, what's outside Shipbreaker's Bay? It's Storm's End. Okay, what happened recently in Storm's End? Not good stuff, right? We spoke a little bit earlier about Prince Lucerys and sadly what happened to him whenever he was dispatched there at the end of season 1. He obviously wants to get the Stormlands to remember their oaths to King Viserys, and that they would swear fealty to Rhaenyra. The Stormlands here, just real quick, are primarily this area right here, like south of like King's Landing, all this stuff like right in here before it turns into Dorne to the south, and the Reach to the west. Okay, Storm's End is the capital of the Stormlands. Okay, it's just like it's their version of what Winterfell is to the north, what Casterly Rock is to the west, etc. Okay, the Baratheons are the overlords of this region. There's Storm's End, there's Shipbreaker Bay. Rhaenyra is there, as we can all see, because she wants this confirmation, this peace of mind of what happened to her second-born son, Luke. Right, she gets a letter of what happened to him up in the sky with, obviously Aemon and Vhagar and what they did. So she's just looking for, like, again, that peace of mind, that like physical confirmation and proof. And that's where we see Rhaenyra for like 95% of her scenes in this episode here, right? Shipbreaker Bay, and obviously Arax and Luke's cloak wash up on shore, and she finally gets like that, again, that confirmation. From there, she's going to go north, back up to Dragonstone right there. Before she says, she wants one particular Targaryen to never draw breath again. Okay, so let's keep moving on. All right, we're not going terribly far from where Rhaenyra ends up at the end of the first episode, right? It's going to be their little brother or sister island there, whatever you want to call it. It is Driftmark. It is the home of the Velaryons. So let me scroll in here. As you can see, Driftmark is just southwest of Dragonstone. The Velaryons come from Valyria, just like the Targaryens did, so they do have that bond, that really, really super tight bond, primarily to like at the very beginning of after Aegon's conquest of Westeros. I mean, the Targaryens and the Velaryons are very much tied together in a lot of what they try to accomplish. Typically, the Velaryons are the master of ships, the Lord Admirals, just because of their expertise and how proficient they are at sea, right? That's kind of like how like Corlys and a lot of Velaryons like get their wealth is by going out to sea and you know, I don't want to necessarily like plundering, but just basically going and coming back with a lot of treasure. They have a really nice port as well, so they're obviously collecting like a good amount of income there just with all the trade that takes place. So staying on task here, drift marks right here. This is where we see Corlys and a man named Alan. More on Alan coming this season. I'm not going to get too deep into him now. Again, a lot of the things that I want to do in these episodes, I don't want to confuse you or drag you through the weeds. I've probably already done that a little bit, but there's more to come with Alan. Trust me, he's not a one episode character. You guys can probably figure that out for yourselves. But this is where Corlys is. This is where the Velaryons. This is their home base right here. And the main thing that they're talking about right now is how they're creating a blockade here in the Gullet, which is preventing trade and potentially reinforcements making their way through the Gullet to Blackwater Bay. And hey, what's sitting at the end of that? Why, that would be King's Landing. What's going on in King's Landing? Well, that's where that is where Team Green is stationed there, and that would be Aegon and all the high towers, right? So basically, right, it's really screwing King Aegon's green faction right now, just based on where they're positioned. Like, this is their only like waterway in, all right? And you got Dragonstone here, which is you know, Rhaenyra and Daemon and like their like insane air force that they have with all their dragons. And then just southwest of them is like, you know, the Velaryons, you know, equally insane naval force that they have. So they're really fucking shit up right now for Aegon because they're creating a blockade here. There's no trade coming in. There's nothing coming in regards to like reinforcements if they want to try to like sail soldiers in. Yeah, that's really screwing stuff up right now for the king. And we hear them talk about that, and that's coming up with, you know, some of the petitioners that you see while he's sitting on the Iron Throne. Obviously, this whole blockade thing here that the Velaryons are you know, working on right now for Rhaenyra is in fact working, right? It's working for them. It's not working out for Aegon. So that would be it for right now for Driftmark. But just to show you guys where that's at on the map, it is right next to Dragonstone, and they're both not very far away from King's Landing. All right, guys, so the next section here, where the next locale of Season 2, Episode 1 is King's Landing. I just spoke about that a bit here in Driftmark. It's kind of hard not to, just because it's so close. If you look right here, you got Dragonstone, Driftmark, and King's Landing. There's a lot of prominent stuff happening just in like this like area right here. There's a lot going on, right? And I alluded to the blockade in the last part there about Driftmark. Well, in King's Landing, as I said, the whole green faction, which would be Aegon's court, is all, you know, stocked up here at King's Landing. Well, that stock's actually dwindling down there because of that blockade. But that's where they're all at right there. And real quick too, if you guys are seeing all this like stuff and it's confusing you, Team Green, Team Black, what the fuck does that mean? Well, Team Black is Rhaenyra, and the ancestral Targaryen colors are black and red. She's always rocking the black of her house. And Rhaenyra, at a point last season, in the first season, when she realized that shit was starting to go sideways, she started wearing green a lot, which is the color of House Hightower, where she starts repping the Hightower colors more so over the Targaryen colors of black. So that's why. And if you look too, like, you have Hightower fingerprints all over Aegon's court with Otto, and as we'll find out here, his nephew, who's the Lord of Hightower, Lord Ormond, and basically the march that you're going to see him embark on from the south as he moves north into the Riverlands. But back on target here, that's King's Landing. All the big players are there. Like I said, the Hightowers, Aegon, Helena, Kristen Cole, everybody's favorite. Boy, I tell you what, very, very divisive man. Not many people happy with Kristen Cole. As you can imagine, King's Landing is going to be equally as important as Dragonstone is to Rhaenyra and Team Black. The whole green faction's there, so there's naturally a lot of like pivotal scenes that take place and a lot of moments that happen in King's Landing in this episode. But I just wanted to show you guys where it's at. It's something you want to keep in mind just because of how close it is to Driftmark and Dragonstone, which are enemies right now of the crown, or the green crown, I guess, if that's what we want to call it. Very close in proximity to each other. King's Landing, definitely where it's stationed at right now, has a lot to think about, and we kind of see how on edge they are when Sir Eric's walking the battlements and almost shits his breeches there whenever someone yells dragon, only to find out that it is Vhagar. Vhagar is patrolling King's Landing right now just because, like I said before, we have a large air force at Dragonstone, and you have a large navy at Driftmark. So the enemies are near, and they're enemies of, again, they have different assets, both of them. They bring a lot to the table on the sea, in the air. So naturally, King's Landing right now, they're kind of, they got to figure a lot of stuff out, right? Which is why that you see them in the small council meeting there, trying to figure out, who they can get in the Riverlands. The North is not answering them. Where Lord Ormond, who is the Lord of Hightower right now, and let me just show you that, just because it makes sense with the Green Council and what they're trying to accomplish. King's Landing's right here if I scroll out. Okay, the Reach is let's see here, Craig Hall is the west. So the Reach, if I'm just going to carve out like a chunk of the Reach right here, this is kind of like the Reach, like that is essentially the Reach. I'm not doing a good job with, if you're following like the cursor there. There's Highgarden right there. Highgarden is the capital of the Reach. And then if you come all the way down here to Old Town is where the Hightower seat is. Old Town's a very prominent place, and this is like a whole separate video, but they have a large port. They have the Citadel there. They have the Starry Sept there. A lot of income, a lot of money, very rich, very powerful, large army. This is where Lord Ormond will be marching from right here, and that would be Ser Otto's nephew, who is the Lord of Old Town. So he's marching out of here, and he's marching north, and he's going to be going into the Riverlands. So he's pretty far away from King's Landing. So if we want to look here at King's Landing, we said Driftmark and Dragonstone are very, very close, which they are. Just look how far away Old Town is. So right, that's a significant distance right there. So just to give you guys some context on that, on where Ser Otto's nephew will be marching from, that's how far Old Town is from King's Landing. Okay, guys, before we move on from Old Town, I do have a couple more tasty morsels I want to dish out to you guys for you to use at your own leisure whenever you want to spit some House of the Dragon fire at people and just let everyone know how much you know about the Westeros map. And this part here is it's pretty good stuff. And it's actually going to mean something here going forward. But Old Town is not the capital of the Reach, right? I just said that. Highgarden, right here in House Tyrell, is the capital and the overlords of the Reach. Old Town is the second largest city in all of Westeros. Okay, so you have King's Landing right here. You have Old Town right here. You have Lannisport right here. And we're going to go up here to the Vale. See that Gull Town right there. And then we go to the north and there's White Harbor. Those are like the 5 main cities of Westeros. Old Town's the second biggest, only after King's Landing. It has a humongous port there, ton of trade, a lot of money is coming inside and out of Old Town. They also have the Citadel. That would be where the Maesters go and they get their Maester chain. Think of it like a big college or university, like a Harvard or a Cambridge, etc. That's where Samwell Tarly goes to get his Maester chain in Game of Thrones. They also have the Starry Sept, which is like the religious capital of Westeros, and you might not think that could be prominent, but even think about Game of Thrones and how things got a little goofy there in his Marjorie Tyrell seasons with the faith, right? So probably some good people to have on your side when you think about it. So Old Town has a lot of money. They have a lot of influence. They have a lot of power, and they have a lot of soldiers. Okay. So the point that I'm getting at is, and again, let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. I don't think I am. I don't think that there is a more powerful family in Westeros that is not the overlord of their region, right? So you look at all 7 kingdoms here. Okay, we're not going to talk about Dorne because Dorne's not involved in this, but you look at the Westerlands and House Lannister, you look at the Stormlands and the Baratheons, you go and look at the Vale of Arryn up at the Eyrie there, and the Arryns, the Starks of Winterfell, and the Tullys of Riverrun. There is no more powerful family that's not in charge of that region in Westeros than the Hightowers. I think right now you can make the argument that Hightowers have more influence and power than the Tyrells do. Easily. Like I think the Tyrells, and at this point, they have their hands tied. Like the Tyrells could want to join Rhaenyra, but they have no fucking choice. They have to join Aegon's side, because right now all the high towers are in Aegon's pocket, or Aegon's in their pocket, whatever way you want to look at it. Point is that if the Tyrells were to say, you know what, we're actually going to go Team Black, guess how quick there would be an army outside of Highgarden and dragons flying above. They'd be scorched. They have no choice right now. I mean, I think the only other place you could maybe make an argument would be the Riverlands. But even still, like, a lot of them just, there's a lot of like internal conflict in the Riverlands. So even still, I don't think there's like a family that would threaten to overrule House Tully. But again, just some tasty morsels there for you, just to let you know like how like powerful Old Town is and how powerful the high towers are at this point in time in, you know, the histories of Westeros. So, all right, we'll get back on track. Let's keep going. Okay, just wrapping things up in King's Landing before we move on. I would be remiss if I did not talk about Blood and Cheese. Yes, Blood and Cheese does take place in King's Landing. As we know, Hooded Daemon makes his way from Dragonstone to King's Landing. Hooded Daemon at this point is really undefeated. I will be upset the day that Hooded Daemon is somehow bested by someone else, because you know when that man has the cloak over his head and he moves in shadows and he has the low whisper, it's just someone's in trouble. So yeah, that does take place at King's Landing. He does make his way from Dragonstone to King's Landing. I'm not going to question the man and how big of a set he's got on him to walk right into the dragon's mouth in King's Landing, because all it takes is one person to sell him out, and he's cooked. I did think that it was pretty funny that Daemon, of all people, had to be the one to go to King's Landing and ask people if they would be able to navigate a way through Maegor's Holdfast to find their way to the royal family, after we see Daemon navigate a lot of those same like secret passageways in the first season with Rhaenyra. But I guess the message had to get to them somehow, and again, everyone's a big fan of Hooded Daemon, so made a lot of sense for him to get there. But yeah, that's where the whole Blood and Cheese segment takes place too, in King's Landing. So it's pretty much all of like the Green faction, Aegon's court, and then, you know, the only person that would be from the outside, really, I guess from like a big player perspective, would be Daemon, as he very clandestinely, if that's even a word, makes his way to King's Landing to hire Blood and Cheese to take out Aemond, but they settle for, you know, another male Targaryen. So that would be it here for the map recap, guys. All right, guys, so I wanted to talk about one person in particular that isn't actually in this episode and won't be in any episodes this season going forward, and it's someone that was referenced at the very beginning by Lord Cregan Stark, and that would be Torrhen Stark. Torrhen Stark was both a king and a lord of Winterfell, and as you can probably figure out, yeah, he was the king of the north whenever Aegon set off on his conquest to have all of the independent kingdoms bend the knee to him as the one true and rightful king of Westeros. Torrhen Stark, as you can imagine, your typical northerner, was not about that life of bending knees, and he did amass a large army to march south and take on Aegon and his sister wives and their dragons. And by the time they made it to the Trident there in the Riverlands, at that point, Aegon and his sister wives had all like just laid carnage and waste all over Westeros. They had dominated at that point the Stormlands, the Riverlands, the Westerlands, and the Reach. In particular, the Field of Fire, which was an absolute just bloodbath of heat and fire and flames and dead Westerners and people of the Reach. He completely extinguished the kings of the Reach in that battle. House Gardner, who were the kings of the Reach, they were there before the Tyrells. The Tyrells were just stewards. That's how they got their claim to fame. Point being, before I get too far off into the weeds again, is that Aegon had absolutely just butchered pretty much everyone that wanted to, you know, face him in battle. So again, Torrhen very wisely made a decision with his brain as opposed to like a decision with his gut or his heart. Probably had some wise people talking to him and saying, hey, you know what? This guy's not fucking around. This dude and his sister wives, those people up there on the dragons, they're not people to be trifled with. And at that point, they had like 45,000 people with them as well that had already either bent the knee to them or just recently bent the knee to them, plus the 3 dragons. And there's Torrhen sitting there with not an army to sneeze at, but again, 3 dragons and 45,000 soldiers facing you there. I mean, again, I think that would make even the most stubborn human standing there like say, hey, you know what? Maybe this isn't a good idea. So he very wisely bent the knee to Aegon and laying the crown of winter at his feet, swearing fealty to Aegon. And Aegon was very a just king. He, told Torrhen Stark to rise as Lord Torrhen Stark of Winterfell and the Warden of the North. Again, Aegon was not like your typical like asshole Targaryen king that we've seen, again, throughout this story here, whether it's Viserys or the Mad King. Viserys, being Dany's brother. Again, very, very just. He's not someone to be fucked with. But at the same time, if you bend the knee to him and, he will help you rise, and he will look at you to be someone that he counts on going forward. So that's what Torrhen Stark did. Probably not someone that's beloved by a lot of Northerners that probably thought he took like the wimpy way out. But I think that would just be, a very narrow-sighted, stupid way to look at it. I think he made a very wise decision. He saved how many prominent people from being a prominent lord or a prominent, Northern house to just like the small folk of the North. He saved how many people just by doing the smart thing and bending the knee. If he didn't, his whole line probably would have been extinguished by Aegon and his dragons. I mean, there's no way they would have made it out of there. So again, people may have been pissed off that they were going to have an overlord now above them, someone that they were going to have to roll up to, being the Targaryens, but everyone else did. It's not like it's something that you should be embarrassed with. Like, the only people that resisted the conquest are the Martells and all the other Dornish lords. And again, hats off to them. They withstand that for like 50 or 170 years after conquest. We're in the Dance of the Dragons right now in House of the Dragon, and that's 130 years after Aegon's conquest. Dorne still hasn't bent the knee. So the Dornish are the only ones. I mean, again, I don't know. I mean, hats off to them, but that's who Torrhen Stark is. I just wanted to take some time and talk about him because Cragen does reference him at the beginning, and obviously, as he's been long dead at this point, he's not going to be in House of the Dragon. So I just wanted to take the time to talk about Torrhen Stark, just because he's such a, iconic Stark king / lord, and just like the time that he was alive, and, him being the point person there in the North during Aegon's conquest. So that is Torrhen Stark. All right, the last thing I wanted to do in this video is just give like an MVP, right? Who was the best performing? It doesn't even have to be like a character. It could be like the actor, like who had the best acting performance in the episode, who was the best character, who just put on the best show overall. And for me, it's very simple. It's Tom Glencarney playing as Aegon II. I thought he was absolutely splendid. The range that he gives Aegon in this episode is really something to look at and something to admire, because again, if you've just read Fire and Blood before, again, it's a historian's recollection of certain characters and events during the Dance of the Dragons. And a lot of these characters are looked at as like black and white characters. Some get a little more grayness to them with some context, but there's no dialogue. Right. There's no like POV like you're reading Game of Thrones and you get to read like Jon or Tyrion or Sansa's inner monologue. Right. Maybe they made like a really shitty decision, but inside you could see that it was eating them up. There's none of that in Fire and Blood. So a lot of these characters that you read about in Fire and Blood, where like Aegon, ultimately, like you read Fire and Blood, like Aegon is like a piece of shit. Like he's a really, really crappy human being. He's a crappy king. You look at Aemon the same way. What the show does is give you that context and gives you that gray area. We saw it in the season finale with Aemon whenever he, you could tell that like he didn't want what happened to Luke to actually happen. Yeah, he wanted to scare the shit out of him. And yeah, he probably wanted to carve his eyeball out of his head, but he definitely didn't want Vhagar to like chomp him up like he was a Cheerio. He didn't want that either. And you could see that it bugged him a little bit, right? So you don't get that context in the books. And at the same time, you don't get that context with Aegon. And we see a lot of cool stuff from Aegon. And again, Tom Glencarney does a great job playing him, right? There's points where, he wants to take his son. He wants to take him to the small council, right? Like he definitely never had those moments with his dad because he was never looked at as the heir by his dad, right? It was always Rhaenyra. So yeah, at the same time, you can make the comment that like he completely ignores his daughter, and that's totally 100% true. But it's the little things, because again, Aegon, don't get this twisted. He's definitely still a piece of shit. But I don't think that he's a Joffrey. I don't think that he's a Ramsay Bolton. Or I don't think he is the Mountain. Those are people that are super, super black-hearted individuals and absolutely just like nefarious human beings in the world of Game of Thrones. I don't think he's that, and I think he showed that in this episode. in particular, whenever he's sitting on the crown, he's listening to the people that obviously like have some gripes, especially like the guy with the sheep, right? You have to go ahead and sacrifice some of your sheep to the crown for feeding the dragons during wartime, right? And Aegon's like, I will reimburse you your sheep. Let me give them back to you. And then Otto's obviously pissed off. He's like, dude, this is going to open up a can of worms. You can't do that. But he's like, but he came here for his sheep. Like, I want to give him his sheep back. That looked to me like a truly innocent part of Aegon there, like that he showed some innocence there and like wanting to do the right thing, like, hey, I'm the king now and someone's coming to me for help and I want to make you whole again. Again, like that's, you know, he wanted to be like the insurance policy for this guy. And I thought that was pretty cool that he wanted to do that. And again, like he's also the same person that, you know, we see like, you know, sitting like an absolute jackass in the throne, shit-faced drunk, talking about Aegon the dragon cock, yada, 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 whatever. And again, he does some pretty shitty stuff in the first season too. But again, you want to talk about just like an awesome range, a great performance that, you know, a character and an actor just like hitting like all these different like peaks. I thought he stood out to me the most. I thought he was absolutely phenomenal. You know, he made you mad. He annoyed you because he definitely started to fuck with Thailand at the table there when his kid was being a little shit. And most parents there would say, hey, you know, quit being a little shit. He goes and just completely antagonizes it. And then, of course, he's going to turn around on Thailand and make Thailand feel like the asshole when he's about to make Thailand give his kid a fucking piggyback ride before Allison steps in. So again, like, let's not get it twisted. I'm not saying Aegon's a great guy. I'm just saying from what I saw, I thought Tom Glencarney just, you know, he brought his fucking A game in this episode. He did an amazing job. Just pulling at like different emotions, you know, with his portrayal of Aegon. So that would be my MVP of the episode. That's the last little section here. That's kind of what I'm going to do for these videos here for the second season. We're going to go ahead and do the map recap. We're then going to talk about any character they brought up that's in the, you know, I guess Game of Thrones, World of Ice and Fire lore, just like Torrhen Stark. We can do a little, you know, a little bit of context on that character, just so you have a little bit of understanding about who they are. Because again, like you might hear, like, and again, sometimes it's hard to understand, and a lot of these accents are strong. You hear someone reference Torrhen Stark, like, who the fuck is Torrhen Stark? Right? Who like a Torrhen Stark? Like, what do they tear? What did they tear? Like, who's Torrhen Stark? That's who Torrhen Stark is, right? Just break it down, like real simple. So naturally, we're always going to hear people reference like people from like, you know, the history books of Game of Thrones. So that's the second section that I'll do going forward. And then lastly, we'll do an episode MVP. Why not? It's fun. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Who was your episode MVP? Again, it could be any character or actor who you thought brought the best performance to the show. Let me know. Maybe there's some other sections I can add to this going forward here. Kind of just doing this from the hip here. But yeah, that was season 2, episode 1, A Son for a Son, House of the Dragon. Let me know what you guys think in a comment. Please drop me a like if you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more, please subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.